Thank you very much. I will go quickly through my presentation. It's a number of slides here, and don't be afraid. Most of them are just for your reference, so that you can look at them afterwards. And I have provided some links also to a number of useful documents. Next slide. Well, in the area of technical regulations for in our sectors, we are basically faced with on the one hand the subject area type of legislation like electromagnetic compatibility or safety, and then we have a product, let's say, that will cover with one legislative piece the whole product. In our electrical sectors we have a number of legislative instruments that we are facing with, and I have listed a number of them here. We have the low voltage, the EMC directive, the radio directive, and then we have the environmental legislation, which is more and more coming up, the restriction of hazardous substance, and the eco-design. I will not be talking about the eco-design here, but it's still a number of elements there that our sector needs to consider there. Next. First of all, I have a general section here of the EU's changed legislative framework with the 768 regulation decision, and it outlines much more clearly now with the obligations we have as industry stakeholders, with more requirements basically than what we've had before. So in general, one can say that it's becoming more of administrative requirements than we see. And I have here provided the links to the new versions of the EU directives that have been adapted to this legislative framework: the EMC directive, the low voltage directive, and the radio directive, and also the restriction of hazardous substances. And as you see, there are also some indications of the transitional and transposition times. There are still some unklarities about those, because if you look at the first ones, you can basically see a strict cut-off, which of course for industry is not possible. You have to have a transitional arrangement where you can actually, in a structured way, change from one approval regime to another one. So, but this is something that we have raised with the Commission, and it will be clarified. Next one, please. Here is a slide with some very useful reference material, and of course we have as a basis what we call the blue guide, where we have a description of the elements of the EU's legislative system, and it's been updated now, and it's a version published at the beginning of this year. It's a very thick document, but it's provides a good guidance and a good understanding and description of the obligations. And also there's another very useful list there at the bottom of the page. Next one, please. On the general obligations, I mean, for manufacturers, we have already had quite a lot of requirements under the existing harmonizing directives in the EU. So what is new for us really is that we have slightly more on traceability issues. Particularly what we can say, which is, let's say, becoming an issue on some is you have to have a postal address on the product. Previously it was only the label, the manufacturer. And also there are some language requirements when it comes to translation into the languages required by different member states, which could become quite onerous in different cases. And we're trying to see how we can, how it is being interpreted, and how we can make sure that it's not overly burdensome to translate. And also there is much more clear now around about corrective actions. And then also it's stated that we need to have one single declaration of conformity, so not one for each phenomenon, but one single. But this may be a color page only, and then we have separate. And it's an issue for some manufacturers, not for other ones. It depends on how they done before. The authorized representative is basically somebody who gets a written permission to do certain administrative tasks, and it's useful for some manufacturers that are outside of the EU to have it as a, let's say, somebody who does the major administrative work, particularly if you have a product for a global market, it might be useful. And then we have next slide, we have the importers. Now they have quite a large number of responsibilities that they didn't have before. They have had importers in previous legislation, but it really wasn't very much. It was basically that they should be able to provide information. Now they also have to ensure that the product actually complies, which means that they have to look at they don't do the testing of certificate or everything, it's just that they have to make sure that with the manufacturer, of course, let's say, to make sure that what they are actually importing is compliant. So that means, of course, much more interactions with the original manufacturer. And they also have to put their name and address on the product. So in that sense, let's say, you will see two names and addresses on the product if the manufacturer is based outside of India. And also they have to do this same procedure on corrective actions where they suspect non-compliance. They have to, depending on the error, they also have to inform authorities. Distributors, that's a new thing. We haven't had any explicit requirements on the product legislation in the EU on distributors before. For these directives I'm talking about. So this is new, and this is actually something that the trading industry is looking at how to interpret right now. They have to act with due care, as it's formulated. I suppose it's a very vague statement, but still, they need to check that it's likely that the product complies, which basically you do a visual check on CE marking, and if you have to have some documents following this product, that these types of documents actually are shipped with the product. So it's really more of a visual checking and making, let's say, likely that it complies. But that's new. And also then this obligation for everybody to basically have a traceability system that they can see who they are buying from and who they are selling to. Normally companies would have that anyway because of the other reasons, but this one is explicitly here as part of traceability. Now I'll come shortly to these four directives, and I'll just go rather quickly on the first, the EMC directive, because it's quite a small change. It's the same, no technical change. It's really, and so it's more of a administrative list that we have to look at. Next slide. On conformity, it's the same as we had in the previous directive, that you as a manufacturer choose. You can do everything yourself, irrespective of whether you have used a recognized standard or not. It doesn't really matter. Or you can choose to involve a third party for type examination and then conform it to the type. In this case, you show your evidence to them, they can give a judgment. And, but it's fully voluntary, and it's the manufacturer who shows this. It's the same as we had before. Declaration of conformity, it's a, here we have some, it was discussion before the coffee break, I guess, on the declaration and the ISO standard, because unfortunately we have some deviations in the template and the EU legislative framework. Not a very big one, but it's still frustrating for us. So we have to be observant about that. And then also the EMC directive allows a separate base for fixed installation equipment, which we already had before. Now on the issues on EMC, the key issue is really the standardization. If you look at the technical aspects, because this is where you need to be part of it, and there's also for Ukrainian industry, let's say, to be part of the standardization infrastructure, which for us is on the one hand ETSI and SNLX. And I just had a look at the ETSI and SNLX homepages, and I know that there are somebody from Ukraine, both of them, like research institute in ETSI, and then Ukraine is an affiliate member of SNLX. So this is something that needs to be increased in the present, because here is where you need to know, where you need to be participating to see what's coming as an industry. And also that you can keep track of the transitional arrangement in the official journals. The low voltage directive, it's not been changed technically. We're talking still about more principal elements of safety. Next slide, please. On the conformity, you have the manufacturer's own assessment, internal, let's say what we call the module A, no mandatory third party, or the directive no longer talks about the third party. Of course, you're allowed to use the expertise of any testing method you like, but it's not being as part of the directive. They give presumption and say that you have the burden of proof on your side with the harmonized standard as usual, but also in the absence of harmonized European standards, you can use the international standards, which is the second choice. And in the absence of international, you can even use national standards, and they will be listed, so they also give assumption, which is new. In our sector, I'm not aware of cases really where there is a lack of European and international standards, but who knows, it may come. And the same then with the declarations. On the issues, next, yeah, thank you. You have the new concept of risk management, and I trust that Monica will be talking about that also, let's say maybe the market surveillance, because this is a new concept which is sort of, it becomes difficult in certain areas where you talk about risk. For the low voltage, you talk about safety, but we also have the concept of risk in other areas where it's then becoming much more unclear. But it's an issue that you have to pay attention to when you look at the framework. Of course, also about the standardization, people need to look at when they write the standard to incorporate all the concepts that is enshrined, so that it will be sort of part of the standards. And here again, also, it's we have the standards and we have Senelec as the actor here, and it's been sort of key for understanding. And of course, now we have a transition to new types of standard internationally. If you are in this area, you will know what I'm talking about. It's a hazard-based standard. It's a totally new concept, so it's something to be aware of. I didn't list it here. Then you have the radio directive. And this is quite a large deviation from the previous one, because here it's not only an adaptation to the existing framework, but also it was a technical change. And so we have an expanded scope. It now includes all radio equipment, also typical radio receivers, which previously were excluded. I have forgotten to mention that it excludes terminal equipment, fixed line terminal equipment. And the reason for that was that under the existing radio and terminal equipment directive there were no specific terminal equipment requirements identified during all these years since 1999, and so there was no need. There was felt that there is no need to any longer have it under this directive. It's sufficiently covered by the EMC directive and the low voltage directive. Of course, then the low voltage would only apply if the voltage limits are applied. Otherwise, it would be, if it's a consumer problem, these terminals would fall under the general product safety directive. So they are excluded. Mobile terminals will be included, but mostly because they are radio equipment, because they are terminal equipment. And so, still, when you exclude, or when you include this radio equipment, you will still have the same EMC and the safety, because these are referred to. So we have similar safety and EMC requirements in the radio directive as in those individual directives, which is very good. And also, just listed about custom built evaluation kits for professional, which is useful when you are in a, let's say, design phase and design and testing phase, and you can have, let's say, product development units that will need to be included. Next slide. On the essential requirements, we have the same deviations, but we have a number of fixed requirements under the directive, and then we have a number of potential requirements. On the fixed requirements, which are always applicable, they are the same as we've had before. So we have safety and EMC, and we refer to these objectives in the safety and EMC directives. Except that then, of course, for safety and low voltage limits, which means that all radio products have the same objectives from the low voltage directive. On spectrum efficiency, which we already had before, there is now, reading the text, a little bit unclear, but they have more focused on receiver performance, what it turns into, it remains to be seen, but it's obvious that they're looking more at more, let's say, defined way of having spectrum, effective spectrum use. And then they have a number of potential requirements. There is a number listed already, which we had before, and we have some new, which is one of them is the combination of software and hardware. This is, of course, something that is becoming more and more common nowadays when you have most functions realized by software. And we don't know exactly what this will mean in practice yet. It remains to be seen, and it's something that we will have to discuss in the guidance document that is being created for the moment. So, but definitely something that will be needed to take into account. And then also, it's been quite a political issue about common battery chargers for mobile phones and small devices, and of course, they now want to bring it down to the regularity. So this is a potential requirement which may be activated if so needed, but currently there is no such requirement. On the obligations, of course, we have the traditional ones, and we have a number of additional requirements. First of all, the big difference with this directive, the same as we have today, is that you have to provide a declaration of conformity with the product. You can do it as a simple statement, and then you have a web link where they can download the full declaration. And also, in case there is a restriction of use, so it's a product that needs a license, you have to indicate this also already on the packaging of the product. And there is a statement about that you have to ensure that the equipment can be legally operated in at least one member state, and there's a specific reason for that also, is that they want to avoid the sale of jammers, which would be illegal in all countries. So it has to be compliant for one country, which means that there needs to be a license available, or a possibility to get a license to operate in one country at least. And we have a couple of remote requirements. You don't need to provide the alert sign, and no notification of your intention to place a product on the market. On the conformity, it's quite like we have it already today under the regular equipment or internal equipment directive. It's divided, so depending on whether or not you have used these fundamental standards, the recognized, except for safety and EMC, because in those directives you don't need a third party. So for safety aspects and EMC aspects, you can choose. You can do everything yourself, you can involve a third party, or you can also have the third party of the quality assurance. It's really up to you. Your choice fully. When it comes to spectrum, and also if there's intent to activate one of these potential requirements, then it depends on whether or not you have used harmonized standards. If you have used it, then you can use any of the three options I mentioned. You can use yourself or have a third party. If you have not used the harmonized standard, then you have to involve a third party. It's the same as we have had before. So, on declaration of conformity, it's the same template. We have a template there in this, and also you have to have this description of software and accessories. It depends on whether or not you have accessories or software that could, let's say, change the behavior of the equipment to make it non-compliant. CE marking shall also be on the packaging, but we have a relaxation there if needed. It may actually be more than 5 millimeters, so that's a positive element of it. Some issues on the radio directive. As always, standardization, of course, here we have ETSI as the main player, and we have a number of ETSI standards for radio performance, and this is really something that I encourage people to participate in. The good thing with ETSI is that you can download all the standards free of charge, so you can see what's going on there. And also you need to take all operating conditions into account when you check it. And there is one thing here that you have to observe, that for safety issues it has to be done under reasonable foreseeable conditions of use. This is not mentioned in the low voltage directive, but it's in the radio directive, so it's a more stringent application of use conditions for safety. And also an issue here is really to need to keep track of what they call the future, the implementing and delegated acts. That's where you activate the potential requirements. And in this directive, there are a number of issues which the Commission will make statements on and decisions on, so we have to keep track of those. Because in the coming years, we will be seeing, let's say, clarifications and new things coming up there. So keep track. Now, all electrical products will also need to comply at least with the ROS directive, which is the restriction of hazardous substances. So, and that already is in place with the new obligations. So, irrespective of what is done with all the other directives and the time frame for transition, you already have to comply with these administrative requirements of traceability and reliability. And here I just mentioned the challenges or issues. It's the essential requirements are the same. It's the characteristics of ROS is that it's not a black box product approval level. It's you look at the material level or substance level really. So if you have anything which is not allowed in the miniature, it's not substance, it's not compliant. So you don't test the whole product, that will not be possible. And since you have thousands and thousands of components usually in a complex product, you don't even test all the components. You have to keep track on your supply chain and make sure that you only get qualified, let's say, components into your supply chain and into your factories. And that's really the whole new thing, is that you base your evidence really on the good knowledge about your supply chain, where you have sourced your components. And on conformity, it's new here because in the old, previously we haven't had anything about conformity assessment. In the existing ROS directive, which we had before a couple of years back, there was no conformity assessment, no CE marking. Now we have CE marking, now we have conformity assessment, now we have declaration of conformity. It's sort of brought into the EU system, and this actually, before that it was a bit of a confusion in EU because there was nothing said about conformity assessment, no marking requirements. And so we saw a lot of different cross marks popping up everywhere around the globe, whereas legislation required none. And now we have the CE marking, so now there should be no other marks on the ROS. And issues, it's standardization, and there we have listed the actual standard that describes this process type, and you make your choice depending on whether or not you can rely on the supplier, whether you choose to do some spot testing on component level, not on product level. And this is really a challenge that you need to be aware of. It's quite different. So I'll stop there a few minutes late, but as I said, you have these reference materials, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to raise them now or later. And we will now writing guidance documents in the commissions, and from industry at least we are involved in the guidance documents for the radio directive. So there will be a workshop in November on that one, and hoping to get some questions, let's say, or replies to some questions with that from the industry sector, and hopefully also that Ukrainian industry gets involved in this and starts to collaborate also with our industry associations in the EU. That will be beneficial for both parties. Thank you.